I felt someone watching me from my own home and horrors unfolded. It all started with the window. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid, but the more I think about it, the less sure I am. One day I was in my parents' room just hanging out when I noticed the window and curtains were wide open. The sunlight was so bright, it practically hurt my eyes. And then it hit me. I was on the second floor, or first floor if you're one of those who call the ground floor the first, and anyone walking by could see me. I wouldn't even notice. A chill ran down my spine and I suddenly felt exposed, like someone was looking in. I shut the window quickly, latched the mosquito screen and left the room. It was summer, so my parents were working most of the time, leaving me home alone. I figured a walk to the park could help clear my head. I sat on a swing, kicking my legs while reading the book I'd brought, The Gift of Fear, one I saw recommended on Reddit. It's all about spotting danger before it even happens by trusting your instincts, e.g., the tickling sensation on your belly like when you are riding a swing. Likewise, I knew about those feelings, especially lately. What better time to start reading it? The park was busy, with lots of suspects, people walking by, and the buzz of conversations filled the air. Suddenly, I heard a woman rushing over and saying, "Daisy, be careful." I turned around, expecting to see my mom, but nope. It was another mom talking to another girl with the same name. Weird, right? As the sun started setting, casting long shadows, I figured it was time to head home. But when I stood up, I spotted something that made my heart drop. A woman, maybe in her 30s, sitting way at the far end of the park on a bench. Her hair was white, like unnaturally white, and her skin was just as pale, and she was perfectly still. I tried to brush it off. Not everything is a gut feeling, and honestly, this was probably nothing, just someone resting like me. But as I walked past her, I couldn't help but look again, and there she was, still frozen in place, just staring at me. When I got home, usually so noisy, now eerie quiet, there it was, the window, wide open again. My stomach flipped. I was sure I had closed it earlier, and it reminded me of that creepy story. In my lifetime in this house, I've closed more doors than I've opened. Instant chills. I shut the window again, way more carefully this time, and went to take a shower, trying to convince myself my mind was playing tricks. But when I came out and went to grab a towel from my parents' closet, I noticed something weird. I could see a shiny object from the window. Was that the ladder from the first floor? I wrapped myself in the towel and crept closer to see. And sure enough, a teenage girl, maybe 15, was climbing down the ladder to the yard, where a group of girls were whispering. I barely heard one of them say, "Quickly." Those neighbors, they'd always felt off. They were a little too quiet. Since we moved in, I'd never seen them outside. Their windows were always dim, like no light ever quite reached them. A couple of times I overheard my parents talking about odd encounters with them, conversations that ended too fast, awkward silences, that kind of vibe. I never thought much of it before, but after that window thing, I started wondering, could they have been spying on us? Was it just some dumb prank? But why open the whole window? Why bother with the mosquito screen? Had they been inside? The more I thought about it, the more unsettled I felt. Something was definitely off. It was like something dark, quiet, and twisted had been creeping around for a while, just under our noses. And that gut feeling of mine? Yeah, it was spot on. I was being watched, but maybe not just from the outside. So I made a plan. The next night, at around the same time as the last one, I hid near the window. When I heard the metallic sound again, I waited, bellowed, and waited till I felt an unwanted guest pressing against the window frame, and then I stood up. I came face to face with the same girl of the day before, the neighbor's daughter, probably. Her face left me breathless. I found myself mimicking her deer caught in headlights expression. She was like a negative image of me, exactly the same with inverted colors. Her skin and hair were as dark as the night, a hypnotic contrast with her pale, almost translucent blue eyes. The situation was so surreal that all I could blunt out was, "Hi? Hi, Daisy." She forced a smile that no longer carried the nervousness of someone caught red-handed. Now it was a grin from someone who was going to really enjoy what happened next. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Suddenly, she grabbed my wrist and slammed it against the frame. The metal dug deeply, marking my fragile skin as I tried to pull away, but her grip was iron. Her unblinking pale eyes brimmed with a fury that felt far too vast for her young face. "So, you like throwing your trash in our bins, huh?" she hissed. Her question was so utterly absurd it made me dizzy, as though the world itself had tilted. "I counted 6 bags," she continued. "So why don't we hang them here on your window?" Before I could process it, she pulled out bags from behind her and began hanging them on the windowsill. The plastic sound cut through the beeping in my ears. 1 bag, 2, 3. The rancid stench was the worst I'd ever smelled in my life. It wasn't me. Please look at me," I gasped. "I'm only a few years older than you. I never take out the trash. Blame my parents, but not me." It was true, but she wasn't listening. Her eyes were empty, as if she were lost in some kind of trance. With one final, almost mechanical movement, she finished hanging the last bag, its contents spilling slightly over the edge of the sill. She leaned back to admire her work and, for a second, loosened her grip on my wrist. That second was enough. I pulled my arm away and staggered back, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and fear. I couldn't move fast enough. I ran. I screamed for my dad. Luckily, it was his day off. I blurted out everything. He didn't hesitate. He marched straight to their house. "Shit," I heard the girl mutter from the window, followed by quick footsteps. Her voice carried the same nervousness she had when I first surprised her. I hurried to look. Behind the glass, I saw her shouting to the same group of girls, "Someone stop him." It's almost midnight. I saw my dad was greeted by an old woman in a wheelchair who came out of the house. Her twisted frame and hunched shoulders made my skin crawl. Suddenly, I felt an overwhelming urge to stop my dad, so I ran downstairs. But to my horror, it was too late. She reached out to him, her frail hand trembling, and time seemed to freeze as they made contact. It all happened so slowly, yet so fast. I looked at her ancient, disfigured face, and somehow in her twisted lines and shadowed contours, I found all the answers to my questions. I knew exactly what was going to happen. It was as clear as the window's glass. At that moment, I felt as if I were also falling into a hypnotic trance. The world around me blurred like she was the only existing thing in the universe. That woman possessed a dark, ancient power, so old that nobody could say how many centuries it had walked among us. Perhaps it was older than time itself, and this was a ritual steeped in vile and unspeakable darkness. By touching my dad under the full moon at midnight, the life bled from his body into hers, leaving behind a hollow, lifeless shell. My mind immediately conjured the vivid image of my father's heart stopping inside his chest and his body falling like a rock sinking in the river under the cold light of the moon. But to my surprise, he didn't drop dead on the spot. Instead, his body began to shake and twist.